How Ray Dalio predicts the next financial crisis. A moment of significant social, political, and economic transition is currently taking place in the United States of America. This transformation is comparable to the conditions that have preceded internal conflicts throughout the course of history. In spite of the fact that this conflict is not a classic civil war, it possesses all of the characteristics of a profound and potentially hazardous divide, which could be referred to as a civil war of irreconcilable differences. In this kind of situation, both extremes of the ideological spectrum are so firmly committed to their own convictions that it appears impossible for them to reach a compromise solution. Not only do these issues stem from differences in policy, but they also go to the core of the nation's identity, values, and dreams for its future. In light of this climate, significant concerns have been raised regarding the efficiency and authority of important institutions, particularly the judicial authority. It would appear that the rule of law, which was once a tenet that brought people together, is now susceptible to selective allegiance based on political membership. The existence of sanctuary communities, disagreements about immigration enforcement, and the limits of federal power in comparison to local power are all indicators of a more fundamental breakdown in shared governance. When enforcement becomes an issue not just of law, but also of physical force, there are significant questions regarding whether institutions, whether they be the police, federal agencies, or even militias, will be regarded as legitimate. It is possible that we have already passed the point where empathy and bargaining can begin to bridge the gap between us. Throughout history, when societies have reached this level of polarization, war has frequently become the method for problem resolution. This is not because conflict is desired. Rather, it is occurring because no alternative choice remains attractive to both sides. Fear itself is the only possible way out of this downward spiral. It is a common knowledge of the perils that lie ahead that compels a turn toward unity and compromise. However, even that outcome seems to be less and less likely to occur. States are becoming increasingly fragmented, with significant differences in policy, governance, and beliefs. This phenomenon is becoming more widespread. The interests of certain states are closely aligned with those of the federal government, while others are moving toward autonomy, rejecting the control of the federal government, and pursuing their own agendas. It would appear that the United States of America is undergoing a transformation into a collection of regions that each have their own cultural norms, economic structures, and ideological identities. When viewed through the lens of history, such epochs are considered to be one part of a cycle. In the years following World War II and continuing into the Reagan administration, there was a level of political cooperation that is inconceivable in the present day. It is possible for leaders such as Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill to have a strong disagreement with one another, but they can nevertheless collaborate in order to uphold democratic principles. Inequality in terms of economic and cultural distinctions were present during that time period. However, they had not yet reached the extremes that we observe today. During the course of the past 3 decades, those disparities have significantly widened. The degree of polarization in Congress, which can be assessed by voting patterns and ideological division, is currently at its highest level since the year 1900, and cooperation between individuals of different parties is almost non-existent. Elections are a reflection of this difference, with entire regions constantly voting along lines that are extremely political. There is a gap in economic status, which is one of the reasons for this breach. There are significant segments of the population that have been left behind as a result of globalization and technological growth. The creation of a high-tech elite, which is concentrated in innovation hubs, educated at top universities, and responsible for huge technological shifts, stands in stark contrast to the millions of people who do not have access to great education and important economic opportunities, despite the great advancements that are represented by unicorn firms and developments in artificial intelligence. The reality for the majority of Americans is bleak. Almost 60% of them have reading levels that are below the 6th grade. The disparity in education has a direct bearing on both the production of goods and the distribution of money. The middle class, which was once the foundation of economic stability in the United States, has been drastically reduced. The combination of automation and cheaper labor from other countries has resulted in the disappearance of manufacturing jobs that gave long-term employment opportunities. While globalization was responsible for making things more inexpensive, it also had the effect of eroding the economic foundation of many communities. Changes in technology have brought enormous wealth to a select few, but they have not been very helpful in elevating the majority of people. Consequently, the country is now characterized not just by a disparity in wealth but also by a fundamental value difference between the many groups that make up the population. At this point in time, we are moving into a world where judgments may be made at a molecular level. This is happening as a result of innovations in artificial intelligence and data analytics. Rather than relying on broad statistical averages, the future of economic planning and policymaking hinges on the collection of granular data, which includes every transaction and every customer behavior. In the same way that molecular biology contributed to the advancement of biology, precise, real-time data will contribute to the advancement of our understanding of society. According to the argument, policymakers have the ability to deploy resources with surgical precision. On the other hand, this amount of control is a double-edged sword since it paves the way for both very efficient governance and surveillance that is extremely intrusive. This advance in technology raises a more fundamental philosophical question. Will artificial intelligence someday be able to regulate human nature, or will human nature be able to shape AI? To what extent we go toward a society that is characterized by better harmony, or one that is ruled by control and coercion, will be determined by the answer. There is a possibility that we are moving toward either dictatorship or anarchy, depending on the manner in which these technologies are managed and the individuals who possess the authority to use them. The United States of America is slipping further and further behind in crucial fields such as advanced manufacturing and applied robotics, which are factors that contribute to worldwide competition. Countries such as China are fast outperforming the United States in terms of practical application, despite the fact that American institutions continue to lead in terms of invention, design, and academic status. This is proven by the number of Nobel laureates and cutting-edge businesses. As of right now, China is responsible for more than a third of the world's manufacturing, which is more than the United States, Europe, and Japan combined. Give that manufacturing is becoming increasingly integrated with artificial intelligence and robotics on a large scale. This provides them with a strategic advantage not only economically but also geopolitically. On the other hand, the United States continues to maintain its competitive advantage in terms of creativity, intellectual property, and the ability to attract talent from around the world. The country's educational institutions, legal structures, and finance markets continue to be unrivaled internationally. However, because the United States is unable to create at a large scale, it is becoming increasingly dependent on exporting ideas while simultaneously importing things. There are dangers associated with this mismatch, particularly in the event that intellectual property rights continue to deteriorate and foreign competitors acquire access to innovations developed. When all of these changes are taken into consideration, the most important thing is not only the advancement of technology or the power of the economy. This is how we interact with one another. The most important question, which lies underlying all of the facts, economics, and geopolitics, is whether or not we are able to discover methods to coexist in a society that we all share. AI has the potential to increase lifespans, decrease sickness rates, and generate incredible conveniences. What about our happiness, though? Will there be a stronger connection between us? Research has shown that once a particular income level is reached, there is no longer a correlation between money and happiness or even health. In comparison to countries with significantly fewer resources, the United States of America, which is the most powerful nation in the world, has a life expectancy that is 5 years lower than that of Canada and ranks poorly in terms of happiness. One of the most accurate indicators of happiness is community. Communities that are robust and filled with support are beneficial to both mental and physical health. It is impossible for even the most cutting-edge technologies to satisfy the human desire for connection if they are not made available. At the end of the day, the future will not be defined only by artificial intelligence, markets, or governments. Rather, it will be shaped by the way in which we choose to interact with one another. Are we going to show empathy rather than division, to collaborate rather than to conflict, If we emerge from this moment of transformation stronger, or if we fracture beyond repair, is going to be determined by the answers to these questions. It has been demonstrated throughout history that empires do not fall merely as a result of assaults from the outside. Rather, they fall when they lose their internal cohesion. As a result, our future is contingent on whether or not we are able to reestablish that cohesiveness before it is too late. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.